Hello everyone and welcome. This is Curtis Jennings and Kyle Burns' how-to video on performing time studies. Within this presentation we will go over how to perform a time study and also discuss the necessary information related to time allowances and also work standards and time standards. But before we get into that, we should first define what is a time study. It's a method that measures the amount of time required to perform a certain task or process, and this is important in manufacturing, as manufacturing usually has processes and people who work on assembly lines, and the process can be evaluated to determine if any changes or modifications are needed. So you can look at the past, how fast or how efficient has a process been completed, what is it at right now, and how could we possibly change some steps or evaluate a certain aspect of the process to make it more efficient. Some general applications for time studies are, again, determining the efficiency of a process or worker. It can be used in production planning, progress and evaluation. So for example, determining, okay, it's going to take X amount of time to get a product out the door, and given that information, how can we use that to determine when we need to order material and when we can start shipping it out. And also the progress and evaluation. We can use all this information to estimate costs and determine whether a individual or a process is feasible for the company. So let's just go over a general procedure that is pretty standard for determining how to perform a time study. And it is noted by Letto and Buck in their book Introduction to Human Factors in Ergonomics for Engineers. And they list these 10 steps. The first step is to choose a method for timing purposes. And you could time a process continuously, or you could also, which is the third bullet point, split the process up into individual elements that need to be timed. And once you do that, you can record the data into organized forms. And this just helps to understand how long each part of the process is taking, and just to have a good visual representation of what's going on. And then select an operator who is typical of the standard time allowance, which means that you want somebody who is on average the average worker, not somebody who's slow, not someone who's very fast, but someone who just does things at a normal pace. And if the person's not already trained, you should teach them the requirements of the process and check for their learning progress. And then you can study the process for n number of cycles or times and determine, based off of previous data, what the performance is right now of the worker or the process, and complete the necessary documentation to carry out any improvements or possible explanations for what is going on. Pearson, which is a company that provides a wide range of products and services to learning institutions and students, published a learning supplement PDF noted as measuring output rates. And within that PDF, they noted that time standards, or also work standards, is the time required for a trained worker to perform a task following a prescribed method with normal effort and skill. Time standards are just a benchmark. It's something that you can compare your time study to. It is something that you could say, oh well, our time study shows that, based off of previous data or something that is pretty standard in industry, our process or workers who are performing the tasks are slow, or maybe they're fast, And also time standards help to understand what the average working rate should be. If you were to hire an individual to perform a task while you're doing the time study, you want somebody who is on average the expected working rate or speed. And a time allowance is the extra time that a process or an individual is permitted due to the delays and fatigue and personal reasons. And within this table below, you can see that personal allowances are accounted for around 5% of the production time, fatigue 5.1%, delay, which is unavoidable, potentially 5.3%. So for example, in this picture, say if a water bottle fell over and the production line stopped, well, that's unavoidable, and that is a possibility for something that we need to take into account, something we need to consider when we're doing time studies.
The next section in our presentation is predetermined time standard systems. Well, the first method is methods time measurements, and the MTM Association defines this as a procedure that helps improve methods and establish time standards by recognizing, classifying, and describing the motions used to require to perform a given operation and assigning predetermined time standards to these motions. A variation of the MTM is MTM1, which is 10 categories of measurement movements. It's reach, move, turn, apply pressure, grasp, position, disengage, release, and other motions that include body, leg, eye, foot, and limited movements. These are all measured in time measurement units, or TMUs. Times are done on experienced workers at a normal pace and takes about 2,000 cycles to make MTM standard time. So how can we use MTMs? Using the measurements taken in many cycles, these observers can use these measurements to improve how workers use their movements to accomplish tasks. You can look into the left-hand movements versus the right-hand movements to see how their times differ. For example, you can make tasks strictly used for right-handed people and other tasks used only for left-handed people. Some MTM forms have descriptions of movements or errors that can occur when the workers are performing these tasks. Obviously, the manager or whoever is in charge using these MTMs can use these to improve workers' tasks and to limit error. Another method for the predetermined time standard systems is the Maynard operation sequence technique, also known as MOST. It is used to calculate the time standards in which a worker performs a task. It concentrates on the movements of objects and is used to analyze work and to determine the usual time that it takes to complete a certain operation. There are many variations to the MOST technique. This technique is also quicker to analyze and use than the MTM methods. Basic MOST is the commonly used and looks into the sequence of actions of the general move, then the control of move, and then the tool used during a task. How can we use MOST technique? There are 4 sequences when measuring MOST, and these can be used to see how much action distance is required, the body motion involved with the action. The observer then looks into how the worker gains control after the body motion, and then looks into the place of the movements. This order of events can be used to improve workers who have limited movements when working and can allow the observer to make adjustments to make the area safer and more efficient.
So in conclusion, for this presentation we have seen that time studies are very useful for determining the efficiency of a process and how improvements can be made to make it more efficient. So looking at the past data, how efficient has it been, what is it right now, and then moving into the future, how can we improve it? And to do that, we must consider the time allowances and time standards, standard operating times for both workers and average times for procedures. And predetermining time standards can be very useful in work environment and can allow for employers to study how their employees' motions can impact their systems. Here is our work cited, and these are the sources that we used for the presentation. Thank you very much.